Hi, I'm Ree Drummond, the Pioneer Woman, and you're going to be making my pressure cooker pulled pork dinner. Let me tell you, this is magnificent, delicious. I'm not just going to show you how to make the pork, but I'm going to show you how to make all the sides that go with it. First thing I'm going to do is turn on the oven, get it preheated to 375 degrees, and then I've got a multi-cooker, also known as an Instant Pot. And I'm going to put it on saute mode, so that'll start getting hot. And now I'm going to cut an onion into chunks, and you can do that along with me. I'm just going to cut the ends off and then slice a little bit so you can easily peel off that outer layer. Have you been using an Instant Pot very much? Tell you what, I was sort of slow to catch on. Once I started using the Instant Pot, it has really revolutionized a certain area of my cooking. What I like to make in the Instant Pot is meat, slow braised meats like brisket, pulled pork that we're making together. Anything that usually cooks low and slow and takes several hours to make, you can often make in less than an hour using the multi-cooker. It is just life-changing. So I cut the onion into chunks, and now you want to grab a few garlic cloves. And to break these open, there's no easier way than just laying the knife on the clove and whacking it until it's flat. If a clove of garlic flies across the kitchen, that just means you're doing it right. It means you're having fun. I think cooking should be fun. And that's why I like to have as few hard, fast rules as possible. One week I may make pulled pork this way. Another week I may make it a completely different way. Keeps things exciting. So I'm just peeling the garlic, getting all that paper off. You can buy peeled garlic cloves in the supermarket in a big old bag, and I am not opposed to that at all. I need to whack this one again. It didn't get the message the first time. There we go. I think you got the message now. Okay, I'm going to give the garlic a rough chop. And when I say rough, I mean you really just want to break it up. You don't have to finely mince it at all. Okay, so by now the pressure cooker is hot. And that's what's so great about the multi-cookers now. You can saute in them. You can use them as a pressure cooker. You can use them as a slow cooker, so you have tons of options. So now that it's hot, you want to take some olive oil and drizzle it in. And then these big chunks of onion go in. Actually just going to add half, I think. I'm going to do the meat in batches, so I'm going to do the veggies in batches as well. And then add the garlic. And now I'm going to cut up a pork butt. It's really called a pork shoulder roast, but in my neck of the woods in Oklahoma, it's sometimes called a pork butt roast. So you want to have a nice sharp knife, and I'm just going to cut this into about 2-inch chunks. Normally, if I'm making pulled pork, I will just put the whole roast into the pan because it takes hours and hours for it to be tender. But since I'm cooking it in the pressure cooker, it's going to take a fraction of that time. And if you cut the pork into pieces before you put it in there, it cuts the time even more. And really, that's what a pressure cooker is all about. In case you don't know how a pressure cooker works, what happens is it traps all of the moisture and heat inside of the machine, and pressure builds up gradually. It actually gets hotter than you would ever be able to get it if you just cooked it on the stovetop or in the oven. And because the heat and the moisture stay trapped inside, it sort of makes the meat cook in just a fraction of the time. It's pretty magical. My grandma used to cook with a pressure cooker, but hers was a stovetop version. That thing was pretty scary. It had like a little knob that you screwed on the top, and when it was going on the stove, it looked like something serious was happening. But now with the electronic pressure cookers, it really kind of takes the guesswork out of things. I've been having lots of fun with mine. If you have one and you haven't jumped into the world yet, you need to try it. It's really fun. Okay, so I've got half the pork cut up, and it goes in. And then this is so easy. I'm just gonna add the seasonings right on top of the pork. So you wanna add kosher salt and some chili powder. And I've got onion powder and garlic powder, so you wanna add those in. This is a really flavorful pork. Alrighty. So I'm gonna move the pork around on the surface of the multi-cooker, and I really want it to sear on one side. It's gonna take a few minutes. This is definitely something you can't do in a traditional slow cooker or other electrical appliance. It's pretty cool that you can saute and pressure cook in the same pot. The other great thing about using a pressure cooker like an Instant Pot is that you can make soups in a really short amount of time, and it tastes like you've simmered them for 3 or 4 hours. You know how when you make a soup and you just leave it on the stovetop to simmer, it just deepens the flavor and it just makes it even more delicious. You can do that in an Instant Pot or pressure cooker in about 45 minutes. Anything that saves me that much time, sign me up. You can call it cheating if you want, but I think it's just a great shortcut. All right, I'm gonna let that sit and start to sear, and I'm gonna use this opportunity to cut up the rest of this pork. Pork shoulder is a really awesome roast. I'm making it in kind of a traditional pulled pork style with barbecue sauce, but you can just kind of add your favorite seasonings. You don't have to make it saucy. The only thing is you have to have either a pressure cooker or lots and lots of time. Cooking this size of a roast in the oven or on the stovetop would probably take 3.5 to 4 hours. And you just can't rush that in a traditional oven or stovetop. This kind of meat has a lot of tough connective tissue, and scientifically it just takes a certain amount of cooking for those connective tissues to dissolve and soften, and that's what makes it eventually so tender, but initially so tough. The same is true for brisket, chuck roasts. I call those my low and slow meats. I used to call them low and slow meats until the pressure cooker came along. I tend to avoid too many countertop appliances when I cook. I'm kind of old school. I like cooking the way that my mom cooked, and she always just cooked on the stovetop. So I think that's why I resisted the Instant Pot for so long. But I was so glad when I finally tried it, because I thought, okay, it's nice to have this option when I want to have a really good dinner and not spend 3 or 4 hours making it. Almost there with my second batch of pork. Eventually this is all going to be shredded with forks, so you don't have to be neat and tidy about how you cut it up. You just want to get it into smaller pieces so it cooks even faster. It already smells good in here, I'll tell you that. Of course, there's a lot of cooking going on behind me too, so that could have something to do with it. Okay, these are just kind of slightly browning. You don't have to go crazy. It's all going to get cooked together anyway. So I'm going to turn it over to the other side, and then when it browns on the other side, I'm going to take all of this out, and then I'll do the second batch of meat and vegetables, add the seasoning. So you do that too, and I'll meet you back here. All right, guys, how's your pork looking? I got a really beautiful golden color on this. The onions are soft. So you want to take your first batch of pork and onions and garlic, and it goes back in with the second. It's hard to brown everything at once, because if you get this pot too crowded, it just takes forever for something to brown. So that's why I split it up into 2 batches. You could use a great big iron skillet to brown everything all at once, but then you're kind of defeating the purpose of this one pot pressure cooker, which is part of the appeal. Okay, now the thing I learned the hard way about a pressure cooker is that it has to have liquid inside in order to build up pressure. So I'm just using chicken stock. You can use vegetable stock. You want to pour in 3 cups, give or take. The pork is going to give off moisture as it cooks too. All right, so now the lid goes on, and listen to this. It gives you a very satisfying little chime when the lid is on correctly. It's very important that the lid is on correctly when you pressure cook. So you want to make sure that the vent is on sealing. You want it to be closed. And then I'm going to pressure cook it for 40 minutes. You will not believe how this pork is transformed in 40 minutes. So I'm going to get some Brussels sprouts going now. I already started prepping them. I have a few more to do. This is a delicious dinner. I'm going to serve the pulled pork with some creamy cheese grits and roasted Brussels sprouts, and the combination is just out of this world. It's like your taste buds won't know what to do. They're going to be so happy. Now, I am pretty lazy when it comes to trimming and prepping Brussels sprouts. I just cut off the very end and then just cut the whole thing in half. You just want to cut off the very tip. You don't want to cut off too much because then the Brussels sprout leaves will fall apart. It still has to have that little end to hold it together for structure. I don't know what it is about Brussels sprouts. I think I read that you don't develop the ability to enjoy them until you become an adult. There's something about the way your taste buds process them, and so I think that's why I hear that a lot of kids don't like Brussels sprouts. It's one of the gifts of adulthood, let me just say that. Roasted Brussels sprouts are like candy to me. I just cannot control myself when they're around. It's great too if you live in a city, which I don't, but you can find Brussels sprouts that are already trimmed and perfectly prepped. I'm making a bunch. This is a great dinner, not just for a kind of weeknight to feed your family, but it's also great for company. Even though it's just kind of barbecue pulled pork, the way it's served makes it so beautiful, and the Brussels sprouts really make it feel a little bit more sophisticated. So I've got 2 sheet pans, and then you want to put half of the sprouts on one pan. Just throw them on. And then put the rest on the other pan. Oh, they're so pretty. That's a lot of Brussels sprouts. I'm very hungry. Oh, this is a big family meal, but my family's not here. Maybe I'll have some takers back there that can join me. Now you want to drizzle these generously with olive oil. Generously because when you're roasting them in the oven, you want to really get those edges sizzly. Olive oil always helps that along. So I'll add some kosher salt and some pepper. Very, very simple. And then I have found no better way to toss Brussels sprouts than with my trusty, rusty hands. You can really get in there. It'll give you a nice little moisturizing cuticle treatment in the process. All right, and then just make sure they're completely spread out. All right, now remember when I told you to preheat the oven to 375? Aren't you glad I did that? Now you don't have to wait, just put them right in. So now I'm going to make the most delicious batch of grits you have ever dreamed about. If you are not a cheese grit person, this is going to completely transform you. So I've got some chicken broth that's just been simmering away in a pot. And I'm going to go ahead and add the grits so they can start cooking. These are stone ground grits, but they're quick cooking, so they really only take about 3 or 4 minutes. Grits are amazing. They're actually very much like polenta, and in fact, a lot of people use them interchangeably. I live in Oklahoma, so of course, to me, these are grits, especially when you add what I'm about to add to them. So almost immediately when you add the grits to the broth, the grits start to absorb the broth, And I'm glad these are quick cooking because regular stone ground grits can take up to 20-25 minutes before they're tender. Usually when I make grits, I want to have a bite like immediately. So thank heavens for quick cooking grits. Okay, I'm going to add some other mischief to the pot. I've got some pepper jack cheese. Basically, grits to me are just a vessel for cheese and cream and butter. So to the pepper jack, you want to add some grated cheddar. And then I love to add heavy cream to grits. So you can add everything from a couple of tablespoons to what I'm adding, which is about 1/4 cup. And I like to add it before the grits are finished cooking because then they almost kind of absorb some of that creaminess. So I'm going to start stirring this in so the cheese can start to melt. And then this is a new favorite ingredient for me to add to grits. Mascarpone cheese, otherwise known as mascarpone, but I'm from Oklahoma, so I say mascarpone. You can also use cream cheese, any sort of creamy cheese. Basically, I'm adding every form of cream that exists under the sun. Adding some butter. As I said, grits are basically a vessel for all the fats in your fridge. Butter, cream, pepper jack cheese, cheddar cheese, mascarpone. Oh, you guys, it already looks amazing. Now, grits do not come pre-salted, so I definitely want to add a good teaspoon, and then you can always add more after you taste it. You can start a pot with little minced up pieces of bacon and cook the bacon. You can add onion before you even start the grits. Pour in the broth, then add the grits from there. That's a really delicious foundation for any grit recipe. Once you start cooking with grits, it's really hard to go back. You're going to find different ways to use it. Traditionally, it's kind of known as a breakfast food, at least where I come from, but I use grits in dinners all the time. They kind of serve as a substitute for mashed potatoes or pasta. I love the texture. It just kind of adds a little something special to regular dinners that you're used to making. And they go with pot roast, and all the things that you would make in a pressure cooker go great with grits. And with that, look what we just made. Creamy, cheesy, delectable, heavenly, wonderful grits. I'm just going to call them cheese grits because that title won't fit on this app. It's too long. I think we should take a taste. It's going to be a little while before the pork is ready. And I'm hungry, and they just look amazing. Here goes. Oh, I'm in heaven. And now it's my favorite time of day, Brussels sprout time. Look at these sprouts, guys. Have you taken yours out of the oven yet? I think it's time. Can you believe those light green, beautiful sprouts turned into these roasted wonders? Oh, they smell so amazing. There is no smell like roasted Brussels sprouts, let me tell you. All right, the sprouts are good to go. Now back to the Instant Pot. So there's a ton of pressure in this machine, and it has to come out before you can safely remove the lid. The good thing about the Instant Pot is it will not let you remove the lid. It's locked on there until all the pressure is released. So 15 minutes ago, the chime went off that told me that the cooking time was over. So I just let it sit, and it naturally released pressure for 15 minutes. That means the machine just kind of lets it out gradually. There's still a lot of pressure in there, so I'm going to do a manual release. Woo! That always catches me by surprise no matter how many times I use the Instant Pot. So you just have to wait here, enjoy the view until all the pressure is out. It can take anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes to get all the pressure out, sometimes longer. But there's a little indicator button, and when it pops down, you know that the pressure is done. But even if the pressure is not out, you still can't take the lid off. And that's what I like about it. It kind of takes the guesswork out of pressure cooking. Other things I like to make in the Instant Pot: pot roast, brisket. I love any kind of sauce that you would normally simmer for a couple of hours. You can make it in about 30 minutes in the Instant Pot. It tastes delicious. I like to do chicken thighs. You can cook maybe 10 to 12 chicken thighs in the Instant Pot for probably 40 minutes, and they'll just be completely falling apart, falling off the bone. It's great if you need a whole bunch of chicken for, say, chicken tacos or chicken enchiladas, chicken and dumplings. It's a great way to cook a whole bunch at once. Lo and behold, the little indicator button popped down, and that means it's safe to take the lid off. Now, this is a little bit time consuming, but worth it, of course. I'm gonna pull the pork, but I've got to get it out onto a sheet pan. I always think it's easier to throw the pork onto a sheet pan and pull it that way than to try to do it inside the pot. There's quite a bit of liquid in here, so it's good to just get it free of the liquid, and then you can shred the heck out of it. Do you have 2 forks ready? That's what you're gonna need. Oh, this smells so delicious. Now, when you get the pork out of the Instant Pot, you wanna make sure you're grabbing all those chunks of onions. Those were not just for flavor. You want those to wind up part of the pulled pork. No onion should go to waste. Okay, I see a big old chunk in there. Okay. Now, I've got 2 forks on standby. Some really serious pulled pork people get in there with gloves on to pull their pork. I like to use forks. Otherwise, I have to search for gloves. I never have them when I need them. I always have forks, I tell you that. Now, you can get really persnickety about how finely you shred the pork. I really do like to kind of leave some chunks still intact. Get a lot of it shredded, but leave a few chunks behind. And then, of course, you've got those beautiful chunks of onion. They are basically on the verge of falling apart. Don't look at them the wrong way, because they will disappear if you do. They are so tender after cooking in all that pressure. I don't use my pressure cooker for everything, but I do have a really good friend, Hyacinth, who has hers on the countertop and pretty much uses it every day. Some people even bake in their pressure cooker. I still like my oven. I'm gonna stick to things like pork and pot roast for now. But it's kind of fun to discover new ways to use it all the time. All right, how does that look? Did you get yours really, really shredded, or is it still kind of chunky? This is just how I like it. Now I'm gonna turn this into barbecue pulled pork. And I took a little shortcut and used a really good bottled sauce. I think bottled barbecue sauce is like the ultimate delicious shortcut. Nobody will ever know. You can make your own if you want to, but I would rather spend the time roasting Brussels sprouts, making cheese grits, and I'm just gonna pour it right on. I heated it up, so then it's going on the pork while the pork is hot. And I won't have to put this in the oven to make sure the sauce is heated. I won't have to put it back into the pan and heat it up. So you can get as saucy as you want with the pulled pork. But one thing I love to do with this is just put it out with some crusty rolls and some slaw and let everybody just have pulled pork sandwiches. But I also love it as an entree, like I'm about to serve. And I think you're gonna love it too. Get all that sauce out. That's kind of the perfect amount of sauciness for me. So watch how this comes together. I'm actually really hungry right now. Very excited about this dish. How does your kitchen smell, by the way? It smells amazing in here. There is so much going on. So remember how I said grits make a beautiful bed? I'm gonna make a bed of creamy, cheesy grits. These have heavy cream and mascarpone and cheddar and butter and all the good things in life. Yes, I'm going to keep going. I'm making a generous bed of grits. Okay, this is a bed I would like to sleep in. Crawl in and just stay forever. Ooh, delicious. Now the grits kind of start to firm up when they get into the bowl, which is good because it kind of gives the whole dish a little bit of a foundation. So I'll just get some pieces of pork and just put them right in the center. Again, you can add a ton of sauce to your pulled pork if that's the way you like it. I kind of like a little bit of sauciness, but I don't want it to be drowning in sauce. Certain people in Texas who take their barbecue very seriously would disagree with me, but since I made this in the pressure cooker, I'm not looking to compete with barbecue champions. Okay, one more chunk. It already looks delicious, but don't forget about the sprouts. I kind of think of these as confetti. I'm just gonna sprinkle them all around. How's this looking? I think it's looking pretty good. And don't be afraid to sprinkle these kind of charred leaves around. I think those are the best part of roasted Brussels sprouts. All right. Oh, one more. There it is, guys. Pressure cooker pulled pork dinner. It's really the dinner of champions. Oh. This is one of my favorite dinners of all time. Those grits are so creamy and impossibly cheesy. And the tanginess of that barbecue sauce with the tender pork. It is the most perfect combination. And if it wasn't good enough, the roasted Brussels sprouts completely send it into a whole different stratosphere. I'm in love. Thank you so much for making this with me, guys. Hope you enjoy every bite.